Hey now, welcome back to the Deadology Podcast. From Pencil Hill Studio, New Paltz, New York. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. Today is May 2nd, 2026, and we're launching a new addition to the podcast tonight. This will be called The Legends Den, where we invite authors to speak about books they've written on legendary musicians. And tonight we have Randy Schmidt. I was fortunate enough to get him on the podcast tonight. He is the author of Little Girl Blue, The Life of Karen Carpenter. It's one of the most memorable books I've ever read, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody, and I was very excited to get him on the podcast. And this series, well, probably every 6 weeks or so, I'll have a different author on to discuss a legendary musician. And tonight we're going to be talking about the great Karen Carpenter. Next week, it's back to the usual Grateful Dead, and we'll be going back to 1977, War Memorial Auditorium, Buffalo, for a seminal show. But tonight, this is the best way to start the series off. Really looking forward to talking to this guy. We had a conversation on earlier this week, and I think I did a pretty adequate job of introducing Randy on the Zoom call. So let's jump right into that Zoom call with Randy L. Schmidt. Hey, man, it's my pleasure to welcome to the podcast Randy Schmidt. Randy, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Great to visit with you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for doing this. We're thrilled to have you here. Let me just introduce you to the audience for those people who don't know you. Randy's the author of Little Girl Blue, The Life of Karen Carpenter, the editor of Yesterday Once More, The Carpenter Reader, and the writer and producer of a great documentary, Starving for Perfection. So this is the man who I've loved the Carpenters. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I said, this is the man I have to talk to for sure, so welcome. And before I even ask you a question, I just got to tell you, Little Girl Blue, I got the audiobook about 2 years ago. It's 16 hours or so. I listened to it in 2 days. And then usually an audiobook, an hour, I got to take a break. But it was so great, I could not turn it off. And then once I finished it, I started again from the beginning. I heard it twice in a row. The only audiobook in my life I ever heard twice in a row. So
that's great to hear.
Yeah, so
Did you notice who the voice is that did the audiobook reading?
No, but she's phenomenal.
It's Cheryl Benteen. She's one of the members of the Manhattan Transfer. And she's I think a 9 or 10 time Grammy Award winning vocalist, and she just really got the tone right. And I was so pleased whenever she read for the part, I guess you could say. And it was not a hard decision to make at all.
I'm so glad you said that, because that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because she did a tremendous job. It's like effortless, and when she's actually saying the Karen part, you think you're listening to Karen Carpenter. It's mm-hmm. It's and even when she's doing the male parts, you don't even know when you don't notice the person, you notice them because they're so good. That's the way I felt.
She met Karen shortly before her death. There's a picture in my book of all these past Grammy Award winners at a Grammy reunion in early 1983, January. So Karen died February 4th of 1983.
February 3rd was the day the music died.
And she, that picture includes the members of the Manhattan Transfer and, Karen and Richard. So they were in that same room for that honor that night.
Well, pretty awesome. That's the one negative of not getting books anymore. You don't have that tangible. I still get books, but I have to do a lot of audiobook stuff now. So, Hey, so my first question, just to give the listeners an idea of how'd you get in, because I've heard this before, but how'd you get into the Carpenters, and tell us about your journey of how you got to writing Little Girl Blue.
It all began back January 1st, 1989. I was watching the TV movie, The Karen Carpenter Story, on CBS. I was a 13-year-old kid, and getting into vocal and choral music myself in school. And so I think there was something about that stacked harmony sound that clicked with me. But of course, Karen's voice immediately was it just pulled me in. And to hear that voice, really to consider it for the first time, I'm sure I had heard it. I knew Top of the World and singing and some of the lighter things, as a kid, but to hear that voice really and listen for the first time, and see her story unfolding all at once. It was it was a, it was a traumatic and wonderful experience all in one. And the very next day, I was in my local library and started researching. Never really, for a long time, never with the idea of doing a book, just for my own kind of nerdy curiosity. I wanted to learn everything that I had missed because I was born right in the middle of the Carpenter's heyday. And so I had to play catch up. And so, the research that I did was just for my own, as I said, my own curiosity. At a certain point, um, when the internet came into homes and universities and things like that in the early 90s, I was looking for other people who loved the Carpenters and ended up starting a Carpenters mailing list. If you remember what mailing lists were like, you know, before they had, forums and chats and things like that, it was, well, I guess they had forums at that time, but yeah, it was an email fan group. And it was the first time for a lot of these people to meet any other Carpenters fans. It seemed like everybody came together and said, I thought I was the only one.
Wow.
And so we gathered this group of fans from all over the world. And there were several opportunities along the way that I got to interview people who knew Karen. I got in touch with one of her childhood friends, and again, just because I was curious to learn more, I said, "Could I do a phone interview with you?" And she said, "Absolutely." And that was, the first of many interviews that I taped and just kind of kept in a box for a while. And these fans around the world would then say, "Hey, how do you know that? Or where did you hear that story?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's on a tape that I did. I interviewed so and so, a few years ago." And they were like, "Man, you need to get those and transcribe them and publish them or something." And after a while, I finally took that advice and um, got enough assembled that I felt like I had a good layout for a book. And it really it really started to take shape about the time that I got a publisher for it, because a lot of times people won't talk to you in advance of something like that. They want to know who your publisher is, what the publication date is, and know that it's legit.
They want to know that you're somebody.
Yeah, it's hard if you haven't published anything before. You're just a nobody reaching out to them. And at the last minute, in the last 6 months or so of the before I had to turn in my manuscript, these amazing friends and confidants of Karen came forward, and that was her best friend, a woman named Frenda. And Frenda said, "Well, I'll have Olivia call you." And I thought,
Wow.
sure, Olivia Newton-John is going to
The
call me.
Olivia.
And I remember thinking, I really need her number or her handler's numbers so I can pester them, because no way is Olivia Newton-John going to call me. But I think it goes to show what Karen meant to Olivia, that Olivia did call me I was gonna say unprovoked, but without me even pestering her or getting a hold of her people, just because this woman Frenda said, "Hey, call this guy." And it was this close circle of girlfriends that all kind of came out of the woodwork right at the end for me, that really helped to tell Karen's story, and not just a repeat of a lot of the Carpenter's stories we had heard over and over. It was really
That
personal.
definitely. As I was listening to the book and I hear the end of, I kind of want to go in chronological order here, but since you mentioned that, it's incredible that the end of the book, where you figure she's dying, she has anorexia, but you hear Olivia Newton-John, you hear all these great friends she had and how spirited she was. It's kind of uplifting to know that she was actually enjoying life and had a lot to live for, even though she was going through such a tough time. So
Right.
hearing from those people was so important. It was very moving to me to hear that, like, because you really understand who she was as a person at the end when all these people come in and talk about her. So that part is great. And
Yeah.
first thing I want to ask you about Barry Morrow, because you kind of hit on this already about actually really listening to the Carpenters. And you tell a story in there where he wasn't interested in doing the Karen Carpenter story, but he got a bottle of wine and actually listened to the Carpenters. Maybe you could recall that for me because I love that.
Yeah, Barry Morrow had done several made-for-TV movies. In particular, one that was sort of autobiographical about him called Bill, starring Mickey Rooney. And he was also working on a screenplay for a little movie called Rain Man around the same time.
I think
But
I heard of that. Yeah.
he got a call from Jerry Weintraub, who was the Carpenter's longtime manager. And the family, I don't think was too keen. The Carpenter family was not too keen on doing a movie about Karen's life, but there was kind of pressure from the outside, other people proposing movies. Todd Haynes came along and did the infamous Barbie doll movie, as they call it, the Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story. And I think that they felt, or at least Jerry talked them into doing this because, the idea was we need to tell this story so that our truth gets out there. And so that's how they talked, Richard and the family into doing this fairly soon after Karen's death. Like this was already, there were scripts for this movie by 1987. So, 3.5 years or so after Karen's death, this was already in the works. But yeah, so they bring in Barry Morrow and say, "Hey, we'd love to have you write this." And he says, "I'm just not into that kind of music." He listed off a number of things that he's into and said, "I'm into heavier, grungier stuff." And the Carpenters are just, he thought they were just like saccharine, I think is the way he kind of described it.
Elevator music. Yeah.
Sticky sweet kind
Yeah.
of thing. And Jerry said to him, "Now listen, take this bottle of wine, go take this stack of records, and just, let yourself go and listen to it and come back to me and let me know what you think." And he did. And he said that was the first time he ever truly heard Karen Carpenter and heard all the undertones, because even when, she sings happy, uplifting songs, there's still a melancholy that sort of, as he said, is like the river that runs beneath, Karen's
Yeah.
Karen's voice. You know that all of that is there. So even when she's singing about happy things, you know that this woman has struggled and has a depth to her that maybe he didn't know was even there to begin with, because he just knew the poppy surface
Yeah.
hits.
Yeah. I think that brought that up because I think anybody listening to this who doesn't love the Carpenters and has that opinion, which a lot of us did until we actually jumped into it. It really needs to do a close listen. I'll tell you how I got into the Carpenters. I'm 62, man. I was there in the 70s, but I'm listening to the Eagles, Chicago, Beatles. I hear Sing and and Top of the World. It's just nice. ABBA is nice. So I never got into them. I never bought an album. And I think Tommy Boy was the first time when I heard Superstar. I'm like, that's a freaking great song. And it's the first time I got a Carpenter CD, but then it still didn't really hit me. A couple years ago, I'm watching YouTube. I had a inexpensive beer, half a gummy in my system, and I put on YouTube, YouTube, and I saw a video of Superstar with a vocal coach talking about Karen Carpenter. And I looked at it and I was like, she looks like a goddess. She sounds like an angel. So it was the visual, and really, when this woman broke down how great of a singer she was, I was totally hooked. Then I saw her play drums on Rainy Day and Mondays. I'm like, she is the eighth wonder of the world. I mean, I've never seen anything like her before. I think so. It was the real listening and actually seeing her in her prime. Incredible.
So it's sort of a revisionist thing for you. Like she kind of slipped under the radar all those years.
Way under the radar. Now I'm in the rabbit hole. I can't get out. For 2 years, I've been like all over
Oh,
the Carpenters, man. I love this stuff.
I
So
think I think Superstar is that gateway for a lot of Carpenters fans, because there's an edginess to it and there's a sort of a darkness to it, but man, it's got everything. It's got everything that makes Karen great and makes, Carpenters and what Richard could do as an arranger. It has all those components, and it's just It's the one that I play for anybody if I'm trying to win a new fan.
Yeah, it's totally magical. It's like when you use terms like it stops time in its tracks. It really does. Like when she comes out, she, she's not even trying. She is the song. She walks out reluctantly and confesses her soul, and nothing is preconceived or contrived. It's just pure what music should be, what a performance should be. Like she was in the zone, in the zone. That performance, that's what it is, man. It's perfect. It's a perfect performance.
One of the things that I love about Karen is that she's not a performer in the way that, so many singers are like, stand back, I'm going to blow you away with this. She just communicates, it, it's a, um, it's a conversational sort of communication that she does. And it's like, Carpenter's fans for forever have said they feel like she's singing only to me kind of thing. It's such an intimate recording. And, she recorded so close to the microphone too. Um, I've visited with several people who were in the booth with her at times. And, they said that her voice was tiny, but the way that the microphone captured it, it became something so much greater. And I think,
Yeah,
she was a good live performer and everything, but there's something about the intimacy of the recording booth and that closeness to the microphone that maybe got lost a little bit in some of the live recordings. I mean, she was always spot on, always sounded like the record, as they say, but the magic really happened in the studios.
yeah. No, she was incredible. It was funny. Like one time after watching that, a Gladys Knight video came on, and you look at it, and Gladys Knight's amazing. I don't really know her story, but you could tell she's been working on her stage craft for years. She knows how to shake it and move and yeah, and all that. Karen Carpenter that really had none of that pre knowledge. It's all just innate, just coming from the heart and soul.
Mhm.
She hadn't worked at being a lead singer or anything. It just she had to come out and do it. And man, she
Yeah,
came through in her own unique way. Man, it's beautiful.
she was sort of thrust into the spotlight, because she considered herself to be a drummer who just happened to sing. And, the drums were her primary instrument. And this voice just happened to fall out one day. And yeah, so she was definitely not trained to be in front of an audience, and it wasn't natural for her. There were several times that people would take her aside and say, this is how to kind of communicate with the audience, because she was used to doing it with her voice, but with, body language and stage presence and all that, that was not there. That was not natural for her.
Yeah, and she was even cool. She in her awkwardness, she was cool. I love it, man. And so let's go back to the beginning, man. So she's in New Haven. Richard's the prodigy. They go to Downey, California, and all of a sudden, Karen's like interested in playing the drums, and it's miraculous how quickly she picked everything up. It's hard to explain. I'm going to kind of ask you to explain it, but how soon did it take? Like, what was the timeline where Richard said, "Damn, my sister's a pretty good drummer. I'm going to play with her." It happened pretty quick, didn't
Yeah, really over about a year's time, I think, because
it?
she
Crazy.
joined the school marching band, but she was first on glockenspiel, and she was so fascinated with the drum line and what they were doing that she wanted to get involved with that. And so, but she kept hearing from all directions, girls don't play drums, and girls might play a xylophone or glockenspiel or something, but not the drums. And she kept saying, but that's what I want to do. And she fought for it long enough that they finally gave in and let her. And there was another girl drummer that joined around the same time at Downey High School. But Karen wanted to study as well, and she went to a place in Hollywood called Drum City and studied with a jazz drummer there. And he really taught her the rudiments of drumming, and she was a natural for mixed meter, time signatures, and things like that would be really difficult for anybody in high school, but apparently she just had really solid time, and she understood the mixed meter stuff and just the jazz feel. So she was a trained jazz drummer, and it was shortly thereafter that Richard started what was called the Richard Carpenter Trio, and it was him on piano, Karen on drums, and a friend, Wes Jacobs, on bass. And so they played a lot of jazz standards and some of Richard's originals, and ended up winning the Hollywood Bowl Battle of the Bands in 1966. And so that got them some recognition, and it actually even led to a deal that they had with RCA Victor for a while, that they recorded several songs, never released, not until box sets in the 1990s. But um, that I think got them a little bit of recognition, but around the same time, Karen's voice began to emerge, and they went to an audition for a friend of theirs from college who was auditioning for Joe Osborne, who was a famous bassist. He played on so many hits in the
The
60s.
Wrecking Crew, was he part of
Yeah,
that? Yeah,
Wrecking
yeah.
Crew. So he he heard Karen sing that night. Now they were there for a trumpet player, I believe, that was auditioning, but Karen was the one that he wanted for his little garage label called Magic Lamp Records. And so that was really the first time that Karen was professionally recorded, with good quality microphones. And you hear those recordings today, and she's 16, 17 years old. You can tell it's her, but it's still really rough around the edges. Um, an unusual and unique sound, but not really what it became quite quickly. They had a vocal group called Spectrum for a while, and there were five singers that had mostly come from their college choir, and they were doing a lot of the songs that Carpenters would later do. But Carpenters ended up recording all of those vocal parts themselves when they did that. But this group Spectrum just couldn't get a deal or anything. It was I guess kind of corny, and not really what was going on with the sounds in music at that point. But they got the next demo that they did was Karen and Richard doing all the parts overdubbed. Richard was using Joe Osborne's studio and layering in all these voices, and um, really experimenting in the studio with what they could do. And that's where the Carpenter sound really began to develop.
So Spectrum was kind of a springboard to get to the Carpenter sound.
Yeah. And it was, the Spectrum kind of all dispersed and went in different directions. And that's when Karen and Richard took the reins and did it themselves. And that demo is the one that got to Herb Alpert finally. Every record company in town passed on it. And Herb was the head of A&M Records, and he didn't necessarily look for what was selling or what was trendy or whatever. He just heard the talent, and he knew that they were playing their own instruments and that they were doing all the vocals, and he just recognized
Talent.
the unique talent and the abilities there and the drive that they had come up with the sound that, I mean, sure, other people were overdubbing and stuff, but there's something about family harmonies. And it can't be replicated. It can't really be recreated any other way.
Yeah, her when you said Herb Albert, I'm thinking 8-track tapes. One of the first 8-track tapes I ever heard was Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass, And
Yeah.
one thing, getting back to Karen with the drums in the beginning, she must have had a competitive fire, man, to get that good that quick. I mean, sure, some of it could be genetics, natural, but it's something you don't think of when you think of Karen Carpenter. She must have had like some kind of competitive fire and burning in her to be that good that quick. What do you think about that?
Like an obsession, really. And she knew that she wanted a certain type of drums, and she asked her parents for Ludwig's. And she joked in the interview, Richard said, "Get the Ludwig's because they'll be better resale value whenever she doesn't want them anymore."
Yeah,
But she, wanted a set like I'm trying to think who else. She loved Buddy Rich. She loved, a number of different players, and she wanted similar sets to some of these people that she sort of idolized at the time.
yeah. I think she mentioned
Um,
Ringo was.
yeah, Ringo,
Yeah,
definitely, and he was on Ludwig's. So that that's really what kicked all of that off. She got her own set. She was taking these lessons in Hollywood, and so the singing just sort of happened because Richard was writing some pop songs at the time and wanted somebody to sing on this demo here and there, and luckily for everybody, Joe Osborne was kind of the middleman that helped to get their sound out there and to get a professional sounding demo recording that was then picked up by A&M Records, 1969.
Yeah, no, her voice is like really mind blowing. On their first big hit, "Close to You," right there. There's nobody's ever done anything like that before. It's so cool when someone comes out like that, a novice, and
Yeah,
she does something that's going to last forever, man. Like that, "Close to
oh,
You," man.
absolutely.
It's
You know,
it,
their first single was a cover of Ticket to Ride, a ballad version of Ticket to Ride from the Beatles, and completely different than anything, any way the Beatles did it. But the voice was there, but it wasn't quite what it became in a very short time with Close to You. The difference between those two recordings is interesting to me because she still sounds younger and more husky sounding on Ticket to Ride, and then she just found that sweet spot for Close to You, and that carried on for the rest of the hits. And very soon after that, We've Only Just Begun, and it just went on and on from there.
Yeah, hey, stepping back one more time to go back to those early days, man. It was the College American show where there's this great video where Karen's playing the drums. She does that drum solo. It's Dancing in the Streets.
Yes, yeah.
I mean,
You're All American
obviously
College
she's
show.
not at her best vocally there, but it's kick ass, man. It's such a great video, man. And even Richard's playing hot on that. It's like you almost think like you're getting a great rock band here on merging a great rock band. It's
Yeah, she could jam, and then that big drum fill that she does near the end is pretty amazing. It's fun to see how many people share that online. How many famous drummers and stuff will say, "Look at this! Here's Karen Carpenter when she was 17 or 18. Like,
yeah.
watch her go."
And she had the mojo, man. They had the Karen
Mhm.
Carpenter drums. She was like a little more outgoing back then. She had a
Right.
rebellious spirit, man. Back then,
She
she was,
was unapologetic about
yeah,
being a girl drummer, which is pretty cool.
yeah, awesome, man. So one thing about Karen's voice as it matures and she gets into that first album, to me, I'll ask you what makes her voice special, but to me, it's like a jazz instrument almost. It's like when Miles Davis hits the trumpet, it's
Mhm.
Miles Davis. I could be listening to a jazz station. The second Miles Davis lips touch that trumpet, I know it's Miles. It's
Yeah.
tonality, it's control, it's emotion. It's she didn't have to go wild or anything. She had I don't know how she got to be that great, but she could sing with the deepest emotion and make it seem effortless. It's just cool as Miles Davis.
So unique, and I think the best description I've heard of it before is velvet, because there's a smooth quality, but there's also a slight roughness. And um so yeah, the velvet sound is a good description. It is very instrument like, the fact that you can identify the texture and the timbre of the voice in the same way you could maybe an oboe or a cello or something like that, the richness. Um, I think of singers today like that make me think of an instrument. Brandy Carlisle. There's a harmonica in her voice. Um, and I don't know, with Karen, I feel like there's a richness of maybe a cello or something like that in there.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible for me who likes to sing along with songs. Obviously, no one can sing along with Karen, but she does have that lower register where I could hit a few notes, man, when I'm singing
Mhm.
along. Man, she's awesome. In the on that second album, which was their big album, the first breakout with the "Close to You." I think
Mhm.
one song that gets overlooked is "I'll Never Love Again," or what was it?
Never Fall in Love Again.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's correct.
Dionne
I heard
Warwick did
that.
it. I think
Mhm.
that's spectacular. It's like for me, that's one of the more underrated. They got the stacked vocals, and Karen's performance on that is just beautiful.
Yeah, they could have definitely released some other singles from that album. They quickly went on to the next album though. But that's a good one. And then another backrack song on there, "Baby It's You,"
Oh
would have
yeah,
been a fantastic um single release too. But they jumped right into that next album after We've Only Just Begun. They went right on to the self-titled, what a lot of fans call the Tan album.
Tan album, definitely a cool name for it. And man, and at this point, Richard was hitting home runs, man. He was like, pick it like he was at his best during this period, man. Just for all we know, my God, that song kills me every time I hear it. I just see you could tears of joy, man. It's just that song just hits home. And maybe you could tell the story of how Richard found it in the movie. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Richard had such a knack for finding songs in unusual places, and um and rearranging them in ways that you wouldn't expect, like going all the way back to Ticket to Ride, arranging it as a ballad and, with a female lead and changing some chord progressions and things like that to make it their own. But like with We've Only Just Begun, he found that on a jingle for Crocker Bank on TV. And Paul Williams, the writer of the song, the composer of the song, was the singer on that jingle. But yeah, then with For All We Know, they were at the movies. They had taken the night off. They had a night off on tour. I think they were in Canada, and they went to go see Lovers and Other Strangers, the movie. And Richard says that even just hearing, I think there's a trombone that plays the melody before the song actually comes in with, someone singing it. And he was already, drawn to the melody just hearing that play. And they ran out of there and, made sure that a lead sheet was sent to them or waiting as soon as they got home, and recorded that right away.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things about that is like people talk about Karen being an old soul. There's an old soul there, and For All We Know, for me, like that's where I hear it, because it's For All We Know is, it seems like the lyrics are positive. Hey, we're getting married. Love's gonna be great for all we know. But the way she sings it, it's almost like she's 50 years old and she's looking back wistfully at how
Yeah.
how exciting it was to be in love when she was like 30 years younger, and
Mhm.
and she has none of this experience, so maybe she never even thought of any of this, but that's the
Yeah,
way it
she was
sounds.
20 or 21, when that album was recorded, and it's amazing. Um, I remember we interviewed Kristen Chenoweth, Broadway singer Kristen Chenoweth, who's a big Carpenter's fan.
Yeah.
We interviewed her for the documentary that I did a few years ago, and she talked about the cry that's in Karen's voice. And, it comes through no matter what she does. There's this cry, especially present in like Rainy Days and Mondays. Um, but she said, even if you don't know anything about this person, you know that even if they didn't necessarily go through pain, they understand it. There's an underlying pain in her singing. And I don't think it's just hindsight. I think it would be easy to say, well, we all know what happened to Karen. And so that's why we look back at that way. But I've heard so many people who listen to it the first time through, and that undertone of pain was present to them, and not just in hindsight now.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's yeah, it's hard to explain or really grasp, but I think you're doing a pretty good job of it. So that Tan album, man, that has, I think Song for You is their best album, but that Tan album, arguably has the three best songs. For All We Know, Superstar, and Rainy Days and Mondays.
Yeah.
Rainy
Mhm.
Days and Mondays, I mean, they should be playing that on blues stations. It's hardcore blues. It's incredible. And I love the story you tell with Paul Williams when he's with his mother. I think was it in Italy or something, and they hear Rainy Days, and
Yeah, he said she used to, that she would walk around and talk to herself all the time and just kind of mumble. And he'd say, "Mom, what are you saying? What?" And she'd say, "Oh, nothing. I'm just talking to myself and feeling old." And that's where that line comes from.
yeah, pretty incredible, man. Just like some things are meant to be. Everything was falling into place. Richard's picking the right songs. His sister became better than him, or arguably as good, as talented as him. It's just like, it's crazy how things come together for these special artists. And I mean, I look at Karen Carpenter as a legend, a musical legend, man. She's just, it's mind boggling how much I enjoy her music. So was she pulled away from the drums before they came out with the song for you? Or was it around that time, or?
It was around that time, maybe a little bit before. They were touring for the Tan album, and she was coming out from behind the drums for some of the ballads and singing those, out front. And they had another drummer that would fill in for her there at that point. But really, yeah, by the time they got into the Song for You and Now and Then album, she was only really drumming as more of a novelty thing. And that's kind of sad, because she never wanted to be considered a novelty, the girl drummer idea. And they would just kind of feature her on some of the up-tempo numbers where she could show off a little. But yeah, it was after that she really didn't return to the drums, except to kind of just do a few showy things here and there.
Yeah, I think that's the moment in your book where things start going in the wrong direction. It's like I think she really enjoyed life up until that point, and then unfortunately, just things started happening. And the drum thing, you really did a great job of bringing out how it really affected because she loved playing the drums, man. They got think of Levon Helm with the band. Do you think anyone would ever pull Levon away and say you can't play a drum? Saying, well, we're going to bring in another drummer and you're going to go out and you're going to front the band. So it's kind of like a sexist thing that could really only be done to a woman. And that, I mean, that's her pride and joy. She became great at the drums, and that was their biggest accomplishment in life. And they just ripped it away from her. Not like thinking. I don't even think they did it maliciously, obviously, but
Oh,
because
no.
they wanted to get her out front. But do you know? Did anyone say, "Hey, like here's an acoustic guitar, play some acoustic guitar, and maybe this will help you. We love you as a musician. We want to keep you as a musician. We kind of need you out front. Pick up a." She probably could have been graded at rhythm guitar like very easily.
I mean, I think she could have probably picked up other instruments, but her love was for the drums, and I just wish they had found a way that everybody could be happy with presenting her at the drums, because that was the thing. They would go on TV shows and stuff, and they didn't know how to frame this drummer, or they would be on stage and it would be like, where's the voice coming from, you know? But I think there were obvious ways that they would address that at times, you know, putting her up on a platform and forward of the rest of the group. There are all kinds of things.
Yeah,
Um,
I
I
watched the
think
videos of the TV shows. It looks fine to me. So,
right. Yeah, they made it work, and I wish they'd let her stay, because I think the sound changed too, because you know there was something really special about um those albums when she was drumming, and or at least when she was still drumming on tour or someone in those early years. I think that it was a really special sound that was unique that they kind of got away from once she was out front.
yeah, she was definitely like sometimes they talk about the Carpenters not being cool, being too bland, this and that. She was her on drums was the cool factor. So
Mhm.
so basically they shot the cool factor in the foot right there by just putting her to sing her. But I mean, she did a pretty as as much as she wasn't prepared. She did a great job. Just evolving with it. And I mean, I look at her at that BBC video. She looks fantastic, like when she's singing all those songs. And yeah,
That's a great one.
yeah, she did a great job. Anyway, I just think it really would have been very, very beneficial for the Carpenters to get her more involved. It's like she had a musical IQ, a musical genius of some kind. And and it's the weirdest thing that somebody's got to do a psychology project and use the Carpenter family trying to figure out what was going on there, because Richard had so much pressure on him. Like, we usually don't empathize with that, but he had to do everything. And he should have been asking Karen, like, hey, go write a song. Here's a piece of paper. I'll send it over to Bettis, and it would have taken some of the pressure off him. But he had to be the man. He had to be, that is Agnes put the pressure on him to do everything. And so it's such a strange family dynamic, man. It's crazy.
Definitely a strange family dynamic, and you know, a lack of control, I think, is what really got to Karen over the years. She felt sort of helpless because everybody was making decisions for her, and I think that's what ultimately led to some of the personal issues that she had over the years.
Yeah, it's a show. There's so many unfortunate things with her early passing, but it would have been great one day if we could have heard a memoir from her where she could have expressed some of this. All we could do is, you know, take a guess at kind of what happened, what she was thinking, but all this stuff was devastating. And obviously every little bit here led to the anorexia. It's that kind of thing is a long time coming. And obviously she was uncomfortable being out front, but it was much more than that. When the drums was
Oh,
like a key thing. Yeah.
but yeah, and there was, you mentioned Agnes, and for those who don't know, Agnes Carpenter was Karen and Richard's mother, and I really think there was almost like a narcissistic parent thing going on there. It's the classic golden child, golden boy Richard, who can do no wrong, and then Karen is kind of the scapegoat that can just she's always to blame for things, and that over many many years builds up, and it was a really toxic environment without meaning to be. I think her mother loved her very much, but the way that she dealt with her children was terribly harmful in the long run.
Yeah, and as Karen got better, in some ways, she was a competition to the mother for Richard's love.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about with the psychology thing. It's such a strange thing, which that so, like a psychologist should do a study on that because it's like the craziest thing. Um, man, just a shame it went down like that. But Richard in some ways was part of. You can almost empathize with that because he had to be the golden boy, and
Mhm.
he's not Bob Dylan. It's like to keep coming up with these great songs, it put a lot of pressure on him. It's when he could have reached out for
Yeah.
help, even with Karen, but like he was like, nope, this is my job. I am this and that. And he had to fulfill that role.
Yeah, I think he liked that role. He liked being able to, well, and he was so incredibly good at it. And Karen was fine to, give the reins over to him in that way.
Yeah, so I want to get back to the good stuff. The song for
Okay.
you. That's to me that's such a great album. I think most of their albums had great songs, but they weren't like great albums all the way through. The song for
Yeah,
you,
that's one of
man.
those
Yeah.
concept albums, that opens with the song and closes with the bookend and
Band
has
on
a
the Run,
like
Paul McCartney.
it
That's
has
what I
the
think of like that.
intermission song.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's such a beautiful concept album. It was everything was planned, so many details. I sure wish that they had released a song for you as a single, and Richard would talk about it, being too long or whatever. But they could have absolutely done a radio edit.
Yeah.
There's a long saxophone solo in the middle, which is great, but it wouldn't have to be there for a radio version if they
Yeah.
needed it to be a certain length. So I mean,
Phenomenal,
that was a
phenomenal
big
song.
missed hit right there, I
Yeah.
think.
And at the very least, they should have approached FM radio with "Song for You" because that should be right up there with Carly Simon songs and Joni Mitchell
Mhm.
songs that would be playing on FM. That would fit right in. It wasn't an AM song really. It
Yeah.
was a spectacular song.
So many hits on that album
Uh,
anyway, even without that one being released. You got Top of the World, I Won't Last a Day Without You, it just goes on and on.
and the way a great album, it's a 1-2 punch to start. Song for You, Top of the World, and you're salivating for the next song. That's a great album. And the next
Goodbye to
song,
Love.
hurting each other, goodbye to love, and it's funny with the intermission. Oh, it takes some time. That's another the Carole King song.
Okay.
I love that. I think that's like a very underrated song. I think it did reach the charts, but that's one of my favorites, man. I just love the way Karen sings on that. The intermission. Other bands of the time would be snorting coke or coughing because they're smoking dope. They went to the bathroom, the Carpenters, because they drank too much iced tea. It was so Carpenters
Right.
to do that intermission thing. It's pretty funny. And all that bless the beast and the children. That song kills
Oh,
me.
right. Yeah.
Great song. So the only thing I made a friend of mine listen to this. He was driving home. I'm pushing the Carpenters like crazy, man. So he listened to it. He loved the song for you. And I said, let me know what you think about the Richard Carpenter song. Yeah, he texts back exactly what I expected. The worst song ever. He's like, the piano picker.
The piano picker,
Yeah,
yeah.
in the like the flat baroque you get away with, that's cool because it's an instrumental. But
Mhm.
in the middle of Karen's just like this brilliant album, he had to throw one of his songs in, and it's
Yeah, the first few albums, there was always that Richard vocal moment. And I think after a while, they finally, you know, came to
yeah.
terms with the fact that, Richard is great at what he does, but he's not a solo vocalist.
And he was very good as a backup. I mean,
Oh,
excellent,
absolutely. Yeah.
excellent. That was his forte, man. In that area, he was spectacular. Another thing with Karen, which when she was doing these TV specials, Perry Como, Andy Williams, she was phenomenal singing with other people. It's like
Mhm.
you could tell they were thrilled to be singing with her, and she had like she was such a good um, complimentary singer. Being in there with
Right.
Carol Burnett, she was
Mhm.
phenomenal in those things, and you just wish she could have broken out of that Carpenter circle for a little bit, just to
Yeah.
to perform with other people. On the TV shows, it was easy to see why she did it, but she never got to go outside of that little realm of comfort with the TV shows. And every once in a while, they'd be doing that, and Richard Carpenter would duck his head in, like, "Don't forget about me." It
Yeah,
was,
I think speaking of the Andy Williams thing, when she's singing, oh no, sorry, it's Perry Como.
yeah,
On the Perry Como show that they did, when she's singing, and yes, I know how lonely life can be. It's like, oh, that if there was only a full recording um of that song, wow. It's just
yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man. She was so good with the duets, and I think we're getting closer to the White House now. Visit to the White House. What do you think about that?
Oh,
I mean, the stuff going on with Nixon, we obviously know is right in the thick of Watergate and everything, but pretty cool. I mean, what the hell? I'm an artist. I don't care what I feel about the president. I'm going to the White House and having a good time, and they played a pretty cool show there.
and it was right in the middle of it. It was like one
Yeah,
one day away from one of the big speeches that he gave, and um like their drummer Cubby O'Brien told us in an interview recently, he said, everybody knew what was going on at the White House at that time, and we were there right in the middle of it, watching it on TV or whatever the night before. Um, but they were excited to be brought in and be performing there, and Nixon called them Young America at its very best, which is not necessarily going to make them much cooler,
the kiss of
with
death. Yeah.
the audiences.
Yeah, but it was cool. Like I love watching the video because you see Henry Kissinger out there. Who was he dating again at the time? Some beautiful
Maybe Van
woman.
Doren, yeah.
I would have loved to have the life of Henry Kissinger. Man, I never thought of that before. But you see these women he had, man, and and Karen looks so cute in that white dress, playing drums on top of the world. It's like it's such a surreal scene, but nonetheless very cool. And then so we got Karen who sings like this old soul and this and that, and we're gonna go. I think it was like 1974 or something. She's talking to Evelyn Wallace, and she's asking Evelyn. She's a multi-million. She's Karen Carpenter. She's asking Evelyn Wallace to kind of mention to her mother that she wants to move out of the house.
Yeah, Evelyn was their fan club secretary and sort of the family secretary in a lot of ways. And yeah, by the way, will you help me with this? Mention to my mom. And she's 24 years old. And there was, again, talking about the strained relationship with the mother. The mother called her a traitor. How dare you want to leave? And it's just bizarre when you think about that but yeah, she and Richard moved out, but then they got a home of their own. So Karen still wasn't really independent
Yeah,
yet.
the mother was always there in the shadows, even when she had that relationship with Terry Ellis a year or two later. Man,
Right.
the mother was always hovering over it, but it is the great like when I hear that in the book or read it or
Mhm.
whichever way you take it in the book, man, it just blew me away. I'm like, she's 24, she's got millions of dollars, and she can't even ask her mother to move out. It's like,
Right.
insane. And this is the same woman who is complete the contradictions in Karen Carpenter's person. It's so she's so intriguing because she was the rebel who played the drums when no women played drums,
Mhm.
and she built up this great career. Then you got the Karen Carpenter who can't break away
Can't
from her
really stand
mother and
up
move.
for herself.
Yeah, yeah, all pretty crazy. So I think like there was the Bob Hope special where like she really kind of she got criticized. I think somebody said she didn't look good and she looked a little chubby. Was
She
it?
thought that. I don't know that anybody else thought it because she looks fantastic.
Yeah,
But she felt that, her hips were more pronounced, and she pointed out to Richard and said that, I need to lose some weight after seeing herself on that show.
wow. And like I've looked at that. She just wore the wrong outfit. It was a little tight. It was not the right color. It's like yeah,
Well,
I
she
could put
was
on
an
a shirt.
hourglass shaped woman,
Yeah,
she had hips,
yeah.
and no amount of dieting is going to change that
Exactly. I
ability.
could put on another shirt and I look 20 pounds heavier, but it's just the shirt. It's the I don't think it was like her best outfit, man, but that's all it was. It was,
Right.
you know, because she's an attractive woman, and
But
that's the crazy thing. Yeah,
that seemed to be sort of the catalyst for the extreme weight loss that began after that, because by the end of that year, by the time they got to the Perry Como Christmas special, I mean, she looked gorgeous. She had, lost a little bit of weight. I say a little bit. She had lost quite a bit of weight, but didn't look unhealthy as she did shortly thereafter. But she
I,
just kept going and kept going
I
and
I
didn't.
think the first video where I see it is the talk of the town, where she looks kind of skeletal a little bit. It's
Oh
too
goodness.
thin. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh wait, talk of the town. Um,
74, I think. Yeah,
yeah, she was losing weight, definitely losing weight by that point. Sorry, I was thinking
yeah.
ahead to. like a
75, yeah. Hey,
yeah,
the Budokan 74, that Japan, that's a
mhm,
tremendous video. Like a lot of people
yeah.
criticize their 74 show. I freaking love that Budokan video. Pretty cool.
That's such a great, moment in time that was captured. I think it really captured them at their best live anyway.
Yeah, and then it's I think 1975 is where she started having hospital issues, collapsing and getting down to like a scary weight, and she never really recovered. It was like 8 years of kind of being in that condition with
Yeah.
little ups and heavy downs, just
A
a
lot
kind of
more hospitalizations and you know that sort of thing than anybody realizes. Her best friend Brenda told me that there were numerous hospitalizations and doctor stays and things that the family didn't even know about because she didn't want them on her back about everything.
yeah. I just had a chuckle, Frenda. It's her best friend, Frenda. It's a
Brenda, yeah.
yeah, it cracks me up every time. So the albums move along. Richard has the Quaalude problem, and Quaaludes were fun. In 1980, I was going to high school. I never had a problem with them, but like they stopped making Quaaludes, but they were kind of fun. I got to stick up for Richard. It was like they were a pretty good high. I was trying to take him for
Well,
sleeping, but
yeah, Richard started them quite innocently. They were recommended to him by his mother,
crazy.
who said, take one of these if you're having trouble sleeping. And of course, I think what Richard says is he took them as directed for quite a long time until he realized what a nice high that they could provide him. And that's when I think things got off track with him in that way. And you can tell in the music that his I think discerning ear starts to kind of suffer a bit there. 1976, 77, right in through there.
Yeah,
He was not in good shape.
the albums weren't as good as their later albums. I don't think were as good. Horizon was pretty good. There's a couple of cool tunes on that. And what did you think of their medleys, like the Bacharach medley? Obviously, Bacharach's great, but what did you think of the medleys they did? They did two of them. They did one on Now and Then and one on
Yeah,
the 10 album.
like on the 10 album, the Bacharach medley, it's interesting because they were doing a Bacharach medley in concert, but they didn't have enough room on the album to do it in the way that they did it in concert. So it's super, super fast. It's like crazy fast, all of the songs. I enjoy it. I think it's some of their best harmonies. It's not anything radio friendly the way it was laid out, but it's fun for an album. And I think it worked well for them in concert. The oldies concept, how they did on Now and Then, the flip side of that album, all sounding like an old radio show. And it's so crazy when you think about this being 1973 and they were doing oldies that were
Yeah,
only 10 years old.
yeah,
Because now when we think of a song 10 years ago,
yeah.
I don't
It's new
many consider that an oldie
to me. The
now.
Red Hot Chili Peppers are a new band.
Yeah, like I feel like oldies would have to go back into the 80s and 90s for us at this point.
Yeah, 70s, 60s. I still haven't made it out of the 70s, man. I'm stuck back in this decade. And 8 times rolling along. We got so they go to the interesting thing is that Karen goes to England in 78 without Richard when he's hospitalized. She looked awful at that. You could really tell, man. She's in a bit of trouble at that point with the anorexia. The Bruce
Bruce
Forsyth.
Forsyth
Yeah,
show, yeah.
just interesting. The
Um,
one performance without Richard.
yeah, and I think she was just, I think, upset that he wasn't necessarily in the best condition to go. She was like, "We're going no matter what," and um, you can tell that she's kind of fibbing whenever they ask what's wrong with Richard, and we just had a bad case of the
The flu.
flu.
Yeah,
But that was really a turning point for her because I think she was looking elsewhere and looking for opportunities, and it led to her doing a solo album with Phil Ramone the following year.
yeah. That was definitely what I was going to ask about next. What do you think? What do you think of that record? I know it was a great experience for her as a human being. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it was as good as what a lot of other people were doing at the time. And
Or as the
it's
Carpenters were doing in the last few albums
or as
too.
yeah, I mean when you think of what the Carpenters did just before, I mean I love the Passage album. It's different and weird and they're experimental. But they really were just grasping at straws like are we country? Are we alien songs? What are we, with calling occupants and things like that. But And I think it's better than, the Carpenter's next album after that, Made in America.
Yeah,
Um, but she really wanted to do what people like Olivia were doing. She wanted to maybe dabble into disco a little bit, and even though it was on the later end of disco, and she just wanted to be able to choose her own songs, I think, and know that she could do it. And I think that's what's so disappointing about it not coming out, because I don't think there was more than maybe one hit on there, if that. But I think if it had been released, whether it had been successful or not, would have been better than how it was deemed unreleasable by Richard and the record label. I
yeah.
mean, A&M Records released Ethel Merman's disco album that year. So if that's releasable, but Karen's is not, come on. It's
Yeah.
obvious there was some behind the scenes
I
stuff.
haven't heard Ethel's album, but I don't think I want to hear
Well, you can imagine.
it.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a fun novelty.
Yeah, so like it's some pretty good stuff. I'm glad she did it. It definitely would have been better if she was healthier. Like if she was going to
Sure.
do her solo
Yeah.
album, she's like that involved with the laxatives and all that. How much like she came into New York, she wasn't like I want to do a Dylan song. She came in like an open slate. She was so used to having Richard doing everything, but I'm glad she did it, man. That
I think it
definitely
was
and
fun that, Phil Ramone asked her, like, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I love Donna Summer. Kind of the last thing you might expect Karen Carpenter
bad
to do.
girls. They're doing-
Yeah, so it's but yeah, I think if she could, I think a lot of things would have changed in her life if that album had been allowed to see the light of day.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it was so cool that all those musicians came in and paid respect to her. The Paul Simon, I think, came in,
Yeah, and
and
she
yeah,
was playing with Billy Joel's band pretty much. It was all of Billy Joel's guys that had worked with Phil Ramone on a number of Billy's hit records. So she had the time of her life, I think,
yeah.
just
Didn't Billy come in there and say something like, "Hey, what am I not playing keyboards or something like that?" It's like
I
I
did,
think,
yeah, yeah, that is a story. Yeah,
yeah.
why am I on this?
So and she met Karen Itchy Ramone, and they had a great little friendship. It's like it was very uplifting to hear that part, the New York story, the good part of it. But then she came back to New York and I mean, back to California, and everybody shot down the record. Richard, just put the freaking thing out, say I like it, and even if you didn't like it, and just
Exactly.
give
Yeah,
her a
it was
little
devastating to her.
conquest. Yeah,
It was devastating because she wanted more than anything to have his approval. And, I think what her best friend Brenda said was that, you know, how much would it have taken for him to just, you know, give her a thumbs up and pat on the back and let her go with it. But instead he told her the album was shit.
yeah, no,
And
horrible, man.
it
Just
was devastating to her because all she wanted was his approval.
yeah,
And I mean, I don't think there was any chance for it after that. They
yeah,
kept saying, well, maybe go in and redo this or do another song. And she loved it as it was. And
yeah. I think
um,
what A&M and Richard wanted was just like, let's get the next Carpenter's album out, and they
exactly, because
and
I
yeah,
think there was a threat there because what if Karen Carpenter went solo? Back then, it wasn't as common for people to do, 10 different things. You'd be solo on this and be in a group in that. And um, especially within the Carpenter family, they weren't open-minded enough to think that those two things could still coexist. That
yeah,
Karen could have a solo album and still record with Richard. Because I think they saw it as, sure, Richard's a fantastic musician and a wonderful producer and A&R guy and all these things, but Karen is a one in a million
1 in a million
voice. And
amongst musicians. She's 1 in a million.
is she abandoning him? Would he have a career if she ended up with a solo career? And I think they were just kind of terrified of that.
Hey, one quick thing, and then we'll wrap up with Tom Burris and this has been a great hour talking Carpenters with you, Karen, my new musical hero. Um, hey, did she? I don't think you covered this in the book, but what kind of contact did she have with Leon Russell? I mean, she does like the two great Leon Russell songs. Did they ever talk to each other? Do you know of that or?
Yeah, so there was, of course, there was Superstar and Song for You, but also This Masquerade.
Great
So there were
tune.
three of
Yeah.
them. I don't think there was much of a relationship there. I've never seen pictures of them together, and I was at the Leon Russell Museum not long ago in Tulsa, where he had
Tulsa, where Bob
the church
Dylan's
studio.
museum. Did you go to Dylan's museum or
Oh wait, yes, it's the Dylan and Woody
Woody
Guthrie.
Guthrie? Yeah.
It's a really cool place. Yeah, so I got to go there as well, but I had a special fondness for the Leon Russell thing just because of the Carpenters connection, and I remember asking there, and they didn't have anything that showed that they had got to go. I'm sure they had, in passing, being at A&M and things like that, but I think Leon was just grateful for them,
Yeah.
making hits of his songs and probably ended up giving him a lot of money in that way. But it wasn't necessarily a close friendship as far as I know. I'd be
Yeah, because
interested.
that Leon Russell's kind of like those guys like Dylan. They're mercurial and just tough to get to. I was just wondering if they
Pen
if there was,
down.
yeah, if there was some kind of interaction there, and just after the 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 disappointment of not getting the Karen Carpenter album released, she
Solo.
meets Tom Burris, man. And Randy, if you gave me this script and I was reading the Tom Burris thing, I was like, listen, man, you're a great writer, you're imaginative, but what are you gonna have an eagle drop shit on her head when she's at the wedding? It's like, how could so many bad things, just the awful things? It's
It was one after the other.
oh
And
my god, it
that's why I
killed her.
think,
Yeah,
I feel if the solo album had come out, for one thing, she probably would have never met Tom Burris.
she'd
And
probably be going to parties, releases for the album,
yeah,
and
I mean,
yeah,
around that time, she was a guest star on Olivia Newton-John's Hollywood Nights TV special. And so she was starting to do things as herself, but then she kind of got pulled back after the solo album was shelved. It was kind of, back to home, back to Downey, back to work with Richard. And she would have been out promoting this album had it been released in the spring of 1980 as she had hoped. But yeah, she met this guy who, um, you know, played himself to be something that he wasn't. She thought that he was, a multimillionaire. And I mean, long story short, he ended up taking her for quite a bit of her money, and was just not kind to her. You know, I had to sort of tiptoe around some of these subjects with the book, but things that friend had told me about the way that Karen was treated were really, really frustrating. I tried to get to Tom and I visited with him on the phone for about 10 minutes one time in probably 2008 or something like that, a couple of years before the book came out. And he said, I can't tell you anything about my relationship with Karen or anything having to do with the Carpenter's family. He was, he had an agreement that had been made there. I remember him saying, I could talk to you till I'm blue in the face about the Carpenter's attorneys. And now I wish I could get him up on that. But
yeah, that doesn't
um,
need to be in the book. That's not interesting.
yeah, but the thing is after I learned what I learned about him from Frenda and from Karen Ramon, Bill Ramon's wife, those were Karen's two closest confidants. And the things they told me about him and the way that she was mistreated near the end, it made me really glad that I didn't bring his perspective into it because
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
there's no way to defend it. It's sickening. But yeah, just awful, man. Just then, I forgot what I was going to say about it, but yeah, just thought, oh, right before the wedding, Karen's mother could have. Yeah, they had the thing with the vasectomy, and Karen
right.
wanted to get out. The one time Karen needed the family to protect her and call the wedding off, they weren't
Yeah.
there for her. They were overprotective her whole life. The one time they needed the family to step in and let the call an
It's
end to the wedding, it's
so
bizarre.
strange too, because the family was suspicious of him and even hired a private investigator and things like that behind Karen's back to try and find out if, he was who he said he was. And Karen was furious, that anybody was questioning anything. But then turns out that he had lied to her. She found out shortly before the wedding that he couldn't have children, and they had talked about that they would. And she felt deceived, and she called her mother and said, the wedding is off. He's lied to me. Everything he told me is I can't trust anything anymore. And Agnes said, oh no, you're going through with this wedding. We've got The invitations have been sent out. We have family members coming in from around the country. People Magazine is going to be there.
People
Like
Magazine.
we
Fuck
have to
People
keep up
Magazine.
appearances. Right, exactly. And that's what Karen should have told her.
uh,
But yeah, they at that point they just wanted to keep up appearances. And Agnes told her, we can deal with it later, but you're going through with this. And I think that's how much under the influence of her family that she was, that she buckled down and gritted her teeth and went through with it, even though I mean it's crazy when there's a video of her wedding you can find on YouTube and stuff, kind of one that was, I'm sure, just a documented thing for the family and everything at that point. But you can see her almost looking at Tom and saying, like, I don't know, it's like she's confirming this. I'm serious about this. Like I'm going through with this, and so you better come up with your end of the deal.
yeah. And then he was kind of still had that playboy bullshit kind of
He was
attitude.
he was
Yeah.
joking and making silly voices and things. It's just I don't know. I'm just so sad for her that was really the thing that sent her spiraling. Because a year later she was in treatment in New York, and had filed divorce papers and things like that. But she was still a married woman whenever she died.
Yeah. And just when, like I said, at the end of the book, the one thing that makes this your book great, the story, and even starring for perfection, you see all these people that loved her, and you hear the story of her like going to Yankee Stadium with EG and Karen Ramon,
Mm.
and there's she's so likable at the end of the book. She still had a great personality with all this stuff happening, and she's slowly dying of anorexia. She still had this spirit, and just such a likable person. When you listen to the
Yeah.
interactions with Dionne Warwick and Olivia Newton-John, and man, so is it. She had so much to live for, and she just obviously the ipecac took its effect on her heart, and there was no going back. And hey, man, you've taken a lot of time with me. I appreciate this. I'm sure the Carpenter fans are going to appreciate it. And I will get some people into the Carpenters who are into the Carpenters. We're going to get this out there and make sure they do the listening test. One last thing I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned it earlier. What do you think of the Todd Haynes thing? I seen that a couple of times recently.
It used to really bug me and I couldn't get into it, but years later, and especially the more I got to know about the story, I was really impressed how much they got right.
Yeah,
And especially because it was out in 1987. There wasn't much
before the Karen
information
Carpenter
out
story.
there.
Yeah,
There weren't any books out at that time. There were a few articles and things that they drew upon, but they really got a lot right for not having all that much information out. And it's interesting because you do kind of forget that you're watching Barbie dolls in these scenes after a while, because you really get into the story and what's going on. And I showed a clip of that to Cherry Boone O'Neill, who is Pat Boone's daughter.
yeah,
And she had her own issues with anorexia and had been in recovery and was writing a book about her experience. And Karen reached out to her. And there weren't many people that Karen admitted that she had an eating disorder. She wouldn't say the words anorexia nervosa till the last year and a half or so of her life. And she reached out to Cherry, and that scene is portrayed in the Barbie doll movie and the Todd Haynes film. And I remember Cherry looking at it and going, really, that's pretty much spot on. That's what it was like. And it was fun to kind of watch her relive that through that movie. So I've
yeah,
heard
yeah.
that's under restoration. That at some point, I think, I don't remember if it's UCLA film or something like that, but somebody is restoring that. As you know, I mean, Todd Haynes is, of course, his own icon in film now.
Yeah, he did a
And that
big
was,
Dylan movie, and yeah,
yeah, and so I think that we may see a better quality
yeah.
um, version of that at some point.
I could understand why Richard wanted to stop it because he was made out to be kind of the villain in there, but
Absolutely.
it's beautiful that like Karen's voice. You hear the songs in there. It makes the movie because you hear the incredible voice of Karen Carpenter, and you see the style deteriorating. It's like a horror movie, but it's accurate and it's very
Yeah.
empathetic to Karen. So that's why I liked it a lot. I just
Yeah,
seen
it
it.
definitely is empathetic. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. Hey, so Randy, thanks so much for taking this time with us, and you are the
Pleasure.
man. You so help with the legacy of Karen Carpenter. It's a great thing you're doing, man. All the
Thank
work
you.
she put in, the edit, the even like the editor reader. I forgot the name of it
Oh
again.
yeah, yesterday once more. The
Yeah,
Carpenter's reader.
pretty cool because you get to see what the people at the time were saying about the Carpenters. So it gives you a pretty that even gives you a pretty cool perspective. But I've listened to the book, I think, 4 times. I've watched Starving Perfection 3 times. I recommend this highly.
And
Go to Amazon and get Starving for Perfection. You can see trailers for it. The trailers will hook you into getting the movie, man. It's those people like Maria and
Maria
everybody
Galeazzi. Yeah.
everybody who comes out for that is so pro Karen. It's not like they're forced to. It's honest. You believe them right away what they're saying. So it's a very cool movie. Carney Wilson's in there, and yeah,
Mhm.
I can't recommend your works enough. And
Thank you.
uh, keep rolling with it, man. So appreciate what you do, and thanks for taking the time with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Take care. Thank you. Hey, I so appreciate that Randy took so much time talking with me here on the podcast. I forgot to ask him 2 things. First, I was going to ask him about Ordinary Fool. This was a song that appeared on a compilation. I believe it was the year of Karen's passing, 1983. It was an outtake from A Kind of Hush, an album off the top of my head. I think it's 75, 76, right around there. Not one of their better received albums, a little light on material. I Need to Be in Love is the most famous song from the album. This Ordinary Fool, I like it better than anything on A Kind of Hush. It's that great of a song. It's got a nice bluesy, jazzy kind of background, sparse instrumentation, perfect for Karen's voice. And she does things like I've never heard her do before on any other vocal, just like really creative singing, but awesome. Great song by Paul Williams. This is definitely in my top, I'd say, dozen Carpenter songs for sure. Ordinary Fool, if you haven't heard it, check it out. It's on Voices of the Heart. And yeah, definitely brilliant song. The second thing I was going to ask Randy about, and I'm sure I know what his answer is on it, but I would have liked to hear him expand on it a little bit. Why aren't the Carpenters in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Now, it's not really a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a Pop Music Hall of Fame. They shouldn't change the name. Should keep it a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But the reality is it's a Pop Music Hall of Fame. How the Carpenters are not in this is insane. It doesn't make any sense. But I guess a couple of things that worked against them from the time period is they weren't part of any scene like the Haight-Ashbury scene or Laurel Canyon. They weren't at Woodstock or any of the iconic festivals. They just kind of existed in their own bubble. So they were definitely not counterculture or anything like that. It was just the Carpenters were on their own little island. But hey, man, it's an island that a lot of people dug because I think they sold 100 million records, and their list of top selling albums and #1 hits, and they had a few #2 hits. It's a long list, definitely worthy of being in any music hall of fame. And it was a tough time period, though. Besides, they weren't part of any scene, and they weren't, doing anything with drugs or anything. Very squeaky clean vanilla. They were up against, look who they're up against: Chicago, Stevie Wonder, Sly Stone, the Eagles, Marvin Gaye, the Beatles, and all their individual careers. And we could go on and on. Creedence Clearwater. They weren't part of the scene at the Fillmores. Yeah, they definitely weren't at all part of the counterculture. They were kind of off on their own island. And as far as things like this, it hurts them because they should so be in the Hall of Fame. And then you take the X Factor, the great Karen Carpenter, from the first 4 years of her career through A Song for You. Nobody like her, man. If you're sending something out to the voters for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I would just take like the video of her playing drums and singing "Rainy Day," uh, "Rainy Days and Mondays" from the Johnny Cash show. Incredible. I think if anybody voting for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame actually looked at the credentials and then saw that, excuse me, they would definitely have to vote the Carpenters in just based on the greatness of Karen Carpenter. In those first 3-4 years, she had the holy mojo rolling, and Richard Carpenter was definitely hitting on all cylinders, picking out the material. They just had a magical run early on, and definitely deserving. But Karen Carpenter, man, one of a kind. Just I could watch those videos, even though they weren't a great live band. I could watch those videos from 69, 70, 71 when she's playing drums and singing. In Randy's documentary, Starving for Perfection, they interviewed Carol Burnett, and she called Karen Carpenter a badass. And that's what she was, especially early on when she was playing the drums. And then after she got away from the drums, still just only one of the greatest singers of all time for the remainder of her career. But yeah, Carpenter's got to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And hey, that wraps up the first volume of the Legends Den. Randy L. Schmidt. I guess the easiest way to access all his stuff is on Amazon. That's Starving for Perfection, quite a documentary. And obviously, I've raved about Little Girl Blue, man. Whether you're into music, you're not into the Carpenters, into them, it's a book I can recommend to everybody. So, yeah, check that one out. We'll be back next week here on the Deadology Podcast. I'm your host, Howard Weiner. If you want to reach out to me, my email, catfishgarcia82@yahoo.com. And my website that has most of my books, as well as Amazon, tangledupintunes.com. Peace out.